Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, uh, I want us to talk about Raphael Tuju. And before we speak about this man from Rarieda, I need to make a disclaimer. I know Raphael Tuju in person, and I've engaged him politically before. In fact, there was a time Raphael Tuju had a political party known as the Party of Action around 2010. We were very actively involved in that party, after which we joined Peter Kenneth because Raphael Tuju didn't vie um, with that party. So I just wanted to make that known that I know Raphael Tuju, I've engaged him politically. We've always shared political ideologies and maybe principles. Of course, until 2018, when we took different paths. He remained with the Uru. I went elsewhere. But the reason as to why that disclaimer is important is so that you understand that making this video is not in any way trying to fight Raphael Tuju or trying in a way to belittle his predicament. No, no, no. This video, ladies and gentlemen, is just setting records straight because there is a part of me that believes somebody somewhere has misadvised my friend Raphael that he needs to politicize this matter. And so in this video, I'll walk you step by step how it all began to today when actually there was a mention at the court. For those of you who follow the issues of Raphael Tuju, he was at the court today for a mention. He is appealing the March 9th ruling that vacated the temporary orders that were stopping possession of the property. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is, lest I get ahead of myself, let us begin from the beginning. And feel free to let me know if the audio is okay, if the video quality is something you can work with. Ladies and gentlemen, around 2015, Raphael Tuju entered into an agreement with East Africa Development Bank. Now, East Africa Development Bank is the same as Africa Development Bank. And of course, it works in the same way the World Bank works. So this is a bank that is largely owned by the countries that form the East African community. And the purpose of this bank is to help with financial facilities for, of course, governments and, of course, other individuals. So how did Raphael Tuju get himself uh, in bed, so to say, with the East African Development Bank? I want to paint you a certain picture here. In 2015, Raphael Tuju was not some victim in the opposition. He was actually very, very close to one Uhuru Kenyatta. Because remember, even though Raphael Tuju did not vie in 2013, around 2014, moving into 2015, he joined Uhuru Kenyatta. Actually, they were the people behind the formation of Jubilee. Jubilee was the coming together of URP and TNA and other small parties, but majorly URP and TNA. And Tuju was integral around 2015. in the formation of this, to the point that when there were primaries, the Jubilee primaries, Tuju was actually in charge then to the initially, and then William Ruto took over because there were some complaints here and there. But I digress. That is not the subject of, that is not the topic for today. I was just telling you, Raphael Tuju was already in bed with the powers that be. And that explains why it was easier for him to get a loan facility from a bank that is largely owned by governments, not government, governments. So that is very important. You see, today, somebody who is hearing about this story today is looking at a victim who is being persecuted for not singing the tune of the day. But I want to tell you that by the time Tuju was getting himself into this deal, he was not some outsider. He was actually a personal friend of Uhuru Kenyatta. And to be exact, he is the man that Uhuru Kenyatta charged mostly to help coordinate his campaigns in Luo. Him and Engineer Reggae. I can remember because I was privy to that information then. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is how it was possible for Raphael Tuju to get such loan facility. So, what was this loan about? What was it? How much was it? Well, Tuju said that he wanted to buy land and build a gated community. I don't want to be technical, so I just want us to get the rough idea of what the loan was. It was, there is a land in Karen that the owner is selling. I would want to purchase this land and then build properties and build a gated community, something like that. And so, because of the influence uh, of the day he had then, yeah, he had a lot of influence then because he was a friend of Uhuru Kenyatta, and the person that had been appointed the director of that particular bank then was a personal friend of Uhuru Kenyatta. So it was easier for Tuju to get this loan. The, there was only one challenge. This bank did not give Tuju the money to buy land. They paid for the land directly. Now, Tuju argues that they were supposed to give him 900 million to buy the land and then give him 300 million to put up the property, like build that particular gated community that I talked about. And according to Tuju, the 300 was not given. And the reason as to why I'm saying according to Tuju, because it is what Tuju is relying on in all his statements. He is saying that the bank defrauded him, meaning he asked for 1.2 billion. The bank gave 900 million, but refused to give the 300 million for him to develop that land. There is just one problem with this story. And the first time I heard about this issue of Raphael Tuju was around 2018, moving into 2019 when the court in London made some decision. But the reason as to why I'm telling you there's a problem with Raphael's version, if you were to buy a property worth 900 million and you have only 300 million to develop that property, chances of you actually making enough to repay that loan are very slim. And I want to give you a practical example. Today, let's say I come to you, those of you who are viewing. So I come to you and I ask you to lend me 100,000 Kenya shillings, not US dollar, just Kenya shillings. I just want to give you a practical example of why I'm saying there was a small problem with Tuju's claim, which is going to help us understand why the court in London made the decision they made. According to Raphael, just as a reminder, he was he was not even given the money to buy the land. These people paid the landowner directly, but then refused to give Tuju the money to develop the land. And for that reason, that explains why it was impossible for him to actually repay. What happened is, with the story I was giving you, with the example I was giving you, I come to you and I ask for 100,000 Kenya shillings. And I tell you, there is something that I want to do. And the rent for the place where I'm going to start this business is 900,000. Is 90,000, because we are using the 100,000 as an example. So I tell you the rent is 90,000, and then the 10,000 is what now I will use to do the business. At the back of your mind, you will be like, this is a joker. Now, I'm not saying that is how the bank reacted and said Tuju is a joker, because after all, they bought the land. But that is where the discrepancy in Tuju's stories begin. Because this facility that was given in 2015 had a grace period of 2 years, 24 months. So around 2017, Tuju was supposed to start paying for this loan. And my friends, he defaulted. And I'm not surprised. That is why I was giving you the example. If I picked 100,000 from you and told you the business I'm going to start, I will need 90,000 as rent. At the back of your mind, you know very well that I'm not going to pay, which perhaps could explain why he argues that he was set up. But then, remember, I told you at the initial stage, Tuju was not a victim then. Tuju was with the powers that be. Just as a reminder, by 2017, Tuju was the Secretary General of Jubilee. And remember, when we were in 2018, Tuju was already a minister in the government of Uhuru Kenyatta. So perhaps there was a part of him that believed that even if he took this loan, he might have used his position in government to make this deal, that deal, and then get money to pay. But this did not work. But then he was not scared. Why? Because he still believed that because Uhuru Kenyatta was in power, this bank, however much they were complaining of Tuju defaulting, Uhuru would still cover him. He was still protected, considering he was a cabinet minister, but also a cabinet secretary, that is, but also at the same time, very close friend with Uhuru Kenyatta. And of course, by extension, a close friend of the director of the bank, who was a Kenyan anyway. So at that time, he didn't bother so much. But then, in this particular contract of theirs, they had agreed that should there be any dispute, the disputes will be settled in UK. And I was digging, why would they pick UK? Then I understood that actually the entire loan facility and the deals that surrounded it were done in UK. And they agreed that should there be problems, they will seek resolution in the UK court. And so when this bank realized that Tuju was not paying and was giving them the excuse of, you refused to give me the other part, and that is why I couldn't develop, and so where do you expect me to get money? They went to court in London. And Tuju was represented fully. This is very important because it is going to explain why the courts in Kenya agreed to register the judgment from UK. They had agreed that every resolution or disagreement would be handled in the UK. And that is what happened. During that time, I tried to look for evidence of Tuju trying to claim that he was defrauded by the bank during the UK a case. He didn't. And that is where the rain started beating Raphael Tuju. Because he didn't allege, or if he alleged, he didn't prove that he was defrauded, that he was duped. And the court in the UK ruled in 2019, that is, Tuju was still a powerful person in 2019, you should know. The court ruled that the bank should get back their money by selling the property that Tuju had. So that was the ruling. So East Africa Development Bank brought that ruling to Kenya and registered it. Our laws allow that if you are a member of the Commonwealth. We have a law that allows exactly for the registration of court judgments from Commonwealth countries. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it is usually called the foreign, let me see what the name of that cap is. Yes. It is usually called the Foreign Judgment Reciprocal Enforcement Act, Cap 43. It is on that basis that the ruling in the UK was registered with our courts in Kenya. Now, when that is registered, for the courts in Kenya to accept it, they look at several things. And I would urge you that if you find time, go and read that act, and you'll find that there are conditions. They don't just take anything. If somebody made a judgment against you in New Zealand or in Australia, it doesn't just come and it is accepted by our courts as the gospel truth. They have to do due diligence. And by due diligence, I mean these people are going to look at whether you are represented, whether you are given a fair hearing, but most importantly was the agreement that your challenges should be resolved outside Kenya. And if that was the case, they also look at, I'm just mentioning a few, you can go and see there are about 15 of them, of the things they look at. They also look at if this particular ruling would have been made in Kenya. And this is what I mean. They're like, whatever judgment these people reached at, if it was brought before a Kenyan law, would it be the same judgment they would reach given the evidence? And so the courts in Kenya registered the judgment of the courts from London. And ladies and gentlemen, this was long time ago. This is 2019. Tuju is in handshake. They are in power. At that time, he's still a cabinet secretary. He sits in the cabinet. He is also the secretary general of the most popular party then. He's in power. So he's not bothered. But there's something. Immediately this case is registered in Kenya, that meant that whatever the judgment pronounced itself on had to be now executed in Kenya. It would now be taken as a court order from the High Court of Kenya. And what was that court order? It was very simple. Ladies and gentlemen, it said that East Africa Development Bank should recover their money. Meaning, as early as 2019, Tuju's property, especially the land that he had bought using this money, and whatever it is that he managed to build, were going to be auctioned to recover the money. By that time, in 2019, the money had moved from 1.2 billion to 2.2 billion because of interest and the cost of the case. If you lose a case, lawyers in the house, you can confirm this. At times, the judge will tell you you cater for the cost. And so cost plus the interest that the loan had attracted led so the money moving from 1.2 billion to 2 point something. Currently, it is a lot. It's more than that. But by 2019, that is what happened. So after that, ladies and gentlemen, Tuju went to court in Kenya to try and tell the Kenyan court to set aside the ruling of the court in the UK. And what was his argument? His argument was now this fraud issue. Remember, I mentioned before that there was a challenge with Tuju's argument. I listened to him some time back, not now. He was on Spice FM, I think a year ago or thereabout. And he was explaining this. At that time, the judges of the Supreme Court had recused themselves because Tuju had said he didn't have faith in the judges. He had gone to the Judicial Service Commission and complained that he was not having faith with the judges of the Supreme Court. So when the judges of the Supreme Court heard that Tuju had no faith, they had to recuse themselves, leave the case. But I'm jumping ahead. What I was telling you is that Tuju now went to Kenyan's court from the High Court, claiming that the bank defrauded him. He was asking the Kenyan court to set aside the ruling of the UK court. So Kenya's court, the High Court, ruled against Tuju. And this is the basis on which they ruled against him. Remember, it was not a new case. It was just him asking them to set aside the case that they just registered. When it is registered in Kenya, now it is being treated as if it is a ruling of the High Court of Kenya. And Tuju was saying because the bank did not give him the 300 million, he could not develop the property, hence he could not pay back the loan. And he was saying the bank defrauded him. So he was going to court to challenge that ruling based on fraud. The courts in Kenya ruled against Tuju on what basis? That when the case was being heard in the UK, Tuju did not attempt to raise the issue of fraud. And even if he did that, he never proved that there was any. So he was told, you are trying to resurrect a case that had already been determined. You are trying to introduce a new thing. The case, the judgment that you want to be set aside had nothing to do with fraud. Now you are introducing new evidence to this particular case, and you want that new evidence to be used to set aside a ruling that was already made. So he was told this is something that has already been determined. Tuju did not give up. He went to the Court of Appeal to challenge the decision of the High Court. The Court of Appeal, ladies and gentlemen, unanimously agreed with the High Court. Of course, Tuju did not give up. He went to the Court of Appeal. But like I told you, before the Court of he went to the Supreme Court, pardon me. He went to the Supreme Court after the Court of Appeal. But like I told you, before the Supreme Court could sit to hear his case, he jumped to the Judicial Service Commission to say that he didn't have faith in the judges of the Supreme Court, that they were likely to rule against him because they were biased. So the judges of the Supreme Court recused themselves. They did not hear the case. They said that is a matter that is supposed to be heard by the High Court, etc. And so Tuju lost. The ruling that was made in UK and registered in Kenya now stood, meaning the bank, East Africa Development Bank, was now allowed by law to get back their money by auctioning Tuju's property. That is what happened legally. Tuju went to court again. When he heard that auctioneers were coming, he went to court. Around 2023, around 2024, Tuju was always in court getting injunctions, stopping the execution of the judgment. until March 2026, the 9th of March this year. Tuju had already gotten some orders that temporarily stopped East Africa Development Bank from repossessing his property. But that particular orders were vacated on 9th. So meaning the judges said, my friend, you are just abusing the court. You're just taking advantage of the court. Whatever you are doing is called delaying tactic. In fact, the ruling of that judge was that this is an abuse of the court process. You know what you're supposed to do, but you're not doing it. You are hiding behind the law. If these people do this, you go to this, etc. And you even go to court and tell the judges something new, yet you are not telling them that whatever you are bringing before them had already been ruled on. So it is something that had already been ruled on, but you are bringing it as if it is new. So these orders that were temporarily stopping the auctions were vacated, and Tuju's property was now supposed to be auctioned or repossessed. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is where politics jumped in. Somebody somewhere told Raphael Tuju that the best way to ensure you have your property is to politicize this thing. Take advantage of the fact that majority of Kenyans, especially the young people, don't have the patience to interrogate things. That means whatever version you will be giving now is what they will take. And so what version did Tuju come up with? Now, Tuju, apart from blaming the judges of being corrupt, I'm not kidding, he even wrote a letter to the Chief Justice of the Republic alleging that the judges were biased against him. The question that you have to ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, is if judges were biased against Tuju and they were corrupt, then this corruption began all the way from the UK courts. The judges in UK, when Tuju was very powerful in government, were against him. Even when he came back to Kenya around 2019, around 2020, even in 2022, when Uhuru was still in power, it must be that the judges were corrupt and against this innocent minister. And that is what Tuju is saying. Number one, that the judges were against him, they were bribed, they were corrupt. But that is not selling well, because if you make it a case between you and the judiciary, it doesn't attract a lot of emotions. You won't see politicians coming to your home and working with you. You won't get sympathies. So somebody told my friend that make this thing not just political, make it tribal. That is why Tuju did not just mention that a powerful person wanted to buy that land and he said no. I want you to get that. This was very careful. Remember, Tuju, unlike what you may think about him, I'm saying, irrespective of what you may think about him, is extremely brilliant communicator. Is one of the most respected journalists in Kenya, and is a brilliant communicator. Brilliant communicator. He knows what to say when. And so when he says that a powerful person in government wanted to buy his land and he said no, then now, remember, the judges are corrupt. It means this powerful person is controlling those judges. Don't forget that. Two, this powerful person wants to buy the land. So he doesn't have to give names. But then Tuju saw that not giving names is going to leave people to make judgments, because somebody argued that it is Uhuru, the powerful person is Uhuru, because this person was arguing that Uhuru and family already have 270 acres of land around where Tuju is, and they wanted the 30 acres or thereabout to add so that they own about 300 acres in Karen. So Tuju was like, no, 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 no. If I leave it open, then people will now start creating who this powerful person is. He now went tribal. He said even the police that were sent to his home were Kalenjin. I am not kidding. And they didn't say this now in English. Now, Tuju, who barely speaks Dolu, I told you I know him, was now giving a report, a statement in Dolu, and telling people that I have the money to pay for the land. I have the money to pay for the loan. In fact, I am not broke, but somebody wants this land, so they don't want the money. And this somebody, let me give you a clue. This somebody sent Kalenjin officers. Now, where did you hear this narrative of Kalenjin officers doing this and that? Well, from our friend Gashagwa. Remember, there was a time Gashagwa was saying there is a Kalenjin squad that is out there to kill Kenyans, specifically Kikuyus. Now Tuju is saying he is a Luo who has made it in life. He's in Karen, he owns property worth billions. But then there is this greedy Kalenjin cartel or one powerful Kalenjin in government who wants to take his land. The bank does not even want money. The court is not ready to listen to him. They are compromised. Now, the bank gave a statement, I believe, yesterday. And they said there is no day, no record of Tuju even attempting to say that he can pay. So then you wonder, why would he say that he's made several attempts to pay the bank and the bank has said, no, we just want the property? It is the power of narratives. And whereas someone has told him that this is going to work, and I want to explain why he might think this is going to work. I will tell you eventually that this is a very risky move that in the end, Tuju might lose not just that land, he might lose his reputation. Because you see, over the years, Tuju has painted himself as both principled and honest. Not just principled. He is both principled and honest. He is the man who stood against Raila Odinga and sided with Kibaki's PNU. Yes. When people were going into 2007 election, Tuju was with Kibaki. He stood his ground. The threats were there. His life was threatened. His family were really ostracized in the rural. It was even impossible for the mother to go to market. But Tuju stood his ground. He painted himself as a man who believes in something and also very honest. So he would call press conference and tell people who Raila is and why he believes Raila Odinga should not lead this country. Even when he was the Jubilee secretary, you can remember, he would call a press conference and lecture William Ruto, who was the DP, was the Jubilee party leader, deputy party leader. And he lectured him to the point that he told him never to step foot in Jubilee House along Pangani. That if he did that, Tuju would arrest him. So is somebody who has no problem speaking his mind, however controversial. But in this case, is now being seen as somebody who has also no problem lying when he believes it is going to fit him. And so let us begin before we go into why he believes this politics will work for him. Let us rewind. He takes a loan in 2015. The belief is he is powerful. He will make one deal and the other and repay this loan because the loan, by the way it was structured, it wasn't making sense. You are taking almost 80% of the loan just to buy land. Whatever it is that you are going to develop with that 30%, ladies and gentlemen, there is no way it was going to repay that loan. But Tuju somehow believed, influence peddling here and there, he was going to get the money to pay. It didn't work, but he was not worried because he was still in power. So even when the court in London ruled against him, he was not shocked. He was not worried. He just went to court in Kenya and he believed that based on the influence he wielded then, the courts in Kenya would start doing things his way. In fact, there's a part of me that believes, ladies and gentlemen, that Tuju did not fight harder in the UK because he believed once the thing was registered in Kenya, the powers that be would help him to get the desired outcome, meaning it was going to be set aside. But since it was not set aside and Tuju was seeing himself losing, he now came up with another claim. The judges are corrupt, the judges are biased. From UK to the to the Supreme Court of Kenya. But when that is not working, he leaves the judges. Now he comes to the political angle. And the political angle is if he goes to court, the court is compromised by powerful politician. He tries with the bank doesn't even want the repayment, they just want the land. And this powerful person who wanted to buy land and Tuju told no is a Kalenjin. Why does he think this will work? Well, he has seen that working before. You see, in Kenya, I can grab land. And when you come to demolish that land, whatever it is that I've built there, I would say that that is where my parents were buried. But perhaps I just built in that particular land a few weeks ago. But if I make it look like I'm being persecuted because I'm against government, because of this and this, then the noise sometimes wins, sometimes it doesn't. But other times it wins because optics also matter, ladies and gentlemen. As a government, you might not also want to be seen as one that is persecuting her citizens. And so sometimes somebody makes noise and they're even compensated to move from a land they grabbed so that they can go and buy another one. And so Tuju has seen this working in some cases and is persuaded that it might also work for him. That is why he is pushing that narrative. So the question is it true that, let us just be blunt here as they put it, is it true that Ruto is the one persecuting Raphael Tuju because he wants to grab his land? Okay, let us just go with the logic. In 2015, Tuju is powerful. He gets into this deal. Tuju lost this entire case as early as 2019. Let us rewind and ask ourselves, how influential was William Ruto in 2019? During the handshake, ladies and gentlemen, William Ruto, the handshake between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto was the least influential person. I remember the Standard used to say, big office, no power. That is how the Standard used to run their headlines. Big office, no power. William Ruto was had no influence to the point that Raphael Tuju could order him and tell him not to step in Jubilee House. That is how William Ruto was. For Raphael Tuju to want you to believe that in 2019, William Ruto already colluded with the bank in UK or with the courts in the UK and the East African Bank to try and snatch land from him, when the person who was running the bank was appointed by Uhuru Kenyatta then. And when William Ruto was a nobody, yet Raphael Tuju was wielding power and closest friend of Uhuru Kenyatta. That would really want us to believe in science fiction. And so I believe that William Ruto was not involved then. And you see, he lost then. All this that we are seeing today is him fighting that loss. And this is where people miss this entire saga. The case was concluded in 2019. Tuju, after that, has been trying to overturn a ruling. Everything that he's doing to date has been to overturn a 2019 ruling from London. And he has consistently failed. The judges can't be that biased, that the judge in UK is biased against you. High Court is biased against you. Court of Appeal is biased against you. Supreme Court is biased against you. All the while, when you are very powerful, that is very impossible in this country. So Tuju just had a miscalculation. And now he must find somebody to blame. Of course, the problem with this approach, and this is just my opinion, I could be wrong. The problem with Tuju's approach is that he believes at the end of the day there will be enough pressure on William Ruto so that he can prevail on the bank, so that the bank can reconsider. That will not happen because this bank is not owned by Kenya alone. If you look at the shareholding of East Africa Development Bank, shareholders, if you look at shareholding of East Africa Development Bank, let me see if I can share the screen. Let me see. Okay. So I hope I'm sharing the screen. But if you look at, this is East African Development Bank. If you look at shareholding, there is Class A, which is Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania. Then there is, and those ones own 92%. So the bank is literally owned by these countries. So even if Ruto even if you put pressure on Ruto alone, you need to know that Kenya owns 20%, these people own 20%, like that. The other shareholders in this particular bank are Africa Development Bank, Yugoslav institutions, CBIC, Africa Holding, Commercial Bank of Africa, the Nairobi one, Nordea Bank Sweden, Standard Chartered, and Barclays Bank. There is no way, based on the shareholding we have seen, it is almost impossible, ladies and gentlemen, to convince these people because of politics to try and reconsider and forfeit the loan. Because what Tuju wants, based on what I'm understanding, he wants a situation where he doesn't repay back the money, but own the property still. Because he's claimed that he has tried his level best to persuade the bank to try and he's willing to even give them a lot of money, as he says. The bank said no. Tuju has not reached us with any offer. Just like I said, when he claims there's fraud, when you look at the judgment in London, there is nowhere in that judgment that Tuju claimed that the bank tried to defraud him. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at that, let's come back to where we are today. So Tuju went to court again after the raid on 13th at his home. He went to court. And in this court, he went to appeal the judgment, the orders made on 9th of March. And I said initially that the orders made on 9th of March were vacating the temporary orders that were stopping East Africa Development Bank from repossessing the property. So he had gone to court before and he got some orders that were giving him time before the auctioneers came in. And so the judgment on 9th removed that. He went to court and today was a mention. So in this particular case, Tuju, apart from saying the judge was biased, is demanding, is pleading, that is the term they use in law, lawyers in the house can say, is pleading with the court to reinstate the orders that are stopping the auctioneers. Interestingly, the judges refused to give him stay orders. So the auctioneers are allowed to go on doing whatever it is that they are doing as Tuju appeals. What he has been allowed is to appeal the ruling on March 9th. So as he appeals, the auctioneers or the bank can still get their property. The judges refused to give him stay orders. He wanted temporary orders that were going to allow him to remain the owner of this property, but they were not given to him. And of course, now he wrote to the Chief Justice claiming that judges have been asking him to bribe them with 10 million and he has refused. Of course, I also told you, he's saying there's a powerful politician who wants this land and he has said no. Eventually, what is the best way forward for Tuju, ladies and gentlemen? If I was to advise Tuju, I would go and negotiate with the bank. I would not politicize this matter because I've just shown you the shareholding. Those are not people you can threaten and blackmail with politics. You are not going to blackmail Suluhu. You are not going to blackmail Museveni, Kagame. No. In the name of petty politics, Kenya's petty politics, no. They are not going to listen to that. So if I was Tuju, I would negotiate with the bank. In fact, I would leave the entire court issues and just go sit down with this bank and say, I've realized that I can't pay this loan. Can we have another arrangement? And I'm not making this up. This is possible, ladies and gentlemen. Even our country, Kenya, was expected to default because the economy was so bad that even Uhuru himself expected that Kenya was going to default under Ruto. So what happened? We restructured the debt. So that is possible. You can go and talk to a bank. You can go and tell them, okay, I messed. I even went political and etc. I have seen my error. And I was asking that we come to a different arrangement where I could do this to repay, or you could do this to recoup your things, but I still some win-win, or an 80% win for the bank and a 20% win for Tuju. That for me would be the best way. I could be wrong, but that is the route I would have taken. You see, Tuju is not the first person to have financial challenges. I knew Tuju when he was extremely liquid. And I'm not kidding when I say extremely liquid. He was extremely liquid. And is not the first person who would come from being very liquid and being insolvent. He has no money. I'm not saying he's broke, but you remember there was a time he was even sick, and they said it is Uhuru who took him to the UK for treatment. The Tuju I knew before would not be seeking for such help. So, in one way or the other, there were financial challenges. And these are things that happen to everyone. You, I, everyone. Today, you might be doing well financially. Tomorrow, you find yourself in a big problem. And so, what would determine what makes the difference is how do you handle yourself. I was even seeing, and this is just by the way, I was seeing a young man called Cairo Caliph. I think he sells cars. And there was this time he was a flyer all over. And now it seems his things are being auctioned. He was even taken to jail sometime for I think a month. So these things do happen. It matters how you handle it. Do you agree that you made a mistake? If you are Raphael Tuju, do you agree that you made a miscalculation believing that now that you are in power, you would do this deal and pay the loan and things didn't work? Did you get overconfident with the powers that you had and forgot that contracts with the bank are binding? So you must reach a point where you also agree that you are wrong. But if in life you reach a point where every you're always right and it's just people not understanding you or people are wrong, then it becomes a problem, ladies and gentlemen. Um, my belief is this case of Tuju, it will be dismissed, chances are, because the logic is the same. You agreed to pay, you're not paying, you're giving stories. So pay up. That is how contract is. It is either you pay or you pay, unless you go and restructure. So, and the person you can restructure with is not politicians camping in your home, is not people trending you on Twitter as a victim. No, those ones won't help you restructure this. It is you going to the bank and telling them this is what I can afford now, or this is what I'm willing to give. I was asking for this leniency. I told you, even Kenya restructured their loans. Our loan, let me not say theirs. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to paint you the picture of what is going on. And the reason as to why I was doing this video is because apparently in our country, misinformation has become the tool of trade. Whatever I choose to say, however unrealistic it is, if I was to get people who agree with me, then it is the gospel truth. Just by the way, this video is not about Nairobi Hospital, but there's a friend who asked me about Nairobi Hospital. And of course, I don't think I'll do a video specifically for Nairobi Hospital. And I told this person, do you know when Nairobi Hospital was started? And do you know on what grounds it was started? And this person doesn't know. All he knows is that Ruto is trying to steal Nairobi Hospital. So, so it's the same as Ruto is trying to sell the airport. Airport is a security installation. You cannot possibly sell an airport. But so long as there is a group that is willing to listen to you, in Kenya, you can get away with anything. And so that is why this channel anyway exists. Whereas we might take sides politically, it's normal. But this channel will be telling you what is only factual, what is backed with what is in public domain. The things I've shared with you here about the issue of Tuju are things that even a brief research will prove that is what happened. In fact, I recommend that if you want to know Tuju's side of story before he politicized things, go and watch him in his interview on Spice FM. Yes, he was really detailed, and during that time, because he had not been told to politicize things, he was blaming the bank, not even the judges, not even the court. He was blaming the bank of fraud, giving him money, knowing very well he can't pay back, so that they can pick back his property. Anyway, I hope you found value. Let me sample some of your comments here. I was seeing 100 people watching, but only 11 liked, which is below pass mark, meaning whatever I was sharing here did not do well. But it's my hope that you got value anyway. If you did, like the video, share the link with your friend. Let me pick some comments here. But Aaron Koros, first one here on Raw Politics. Karibu sana. Thank you. EM video and audio quality iko sawa. Thank you. Peter Keguaro, audio is okay and the video is okay. We can work with. Thank you. EM, I like how well researched you are before you speak about any issue that is commendable. I'm humbled. Thank you. Jerry Moses, who is the senior man who wants to buy his property? Wacha story mingi that you don't know. Okay, so the senior man, according to you, Jerry Moses, ni nani? You can help us. I didn't claim superiority in terms of knowledge. You can help us. Who is that? Peter Nyongesa, well explained. It is now becoming clear. Karibu. Susan Mwangi, there is no senior man who wants to buy his property just because he had other people saying it does not make it true. Yes. EM, thank you, Susan. You've even put it better. I remember the issue of Nganga. This Nganga, the evangelist who has known evangelism in town. He has a very prime property, because where his church is built is extremely prime. And so, and him and Margaret Wanjiru. And so there was this time the railway, it is said, wanted to take back their land. That was what was said. But how did Nganga and others play it? They went the route of some politician wants my land, and it sold. EM 551, the idea that the bank is refusing to receive money is actually funny. And let me see if I can get the statement from let me see if I can get the statement from the bank. Yes, I think let me see if I can. Yes, there's a statement from the bank, official statement that they gave on the issue of Raphael. They said, this is the East Africa Development Bank position statement on matters regarding one of its debtors in the Republic of Kenya. And this statement was issued in Kampala, Uganda. And they say there's this part, I believe I don't know. There's this part. In 2015, Dari Limited, a company registered in the Republic of Kenya, borrowed $9 million from our bank under loan facility agreement dated April 10th, 2015. This agreement was jointly negotiated and agreed upon by both parties, who were respectively represented by counsel. At security, as security of the facility, Dari Limited shareholders and directors pledged various properties they owned in Nairobi, which were subsequently charged to the bank. Subsequently, the loan was drawn on that pursuant to the terms of facility agreement after the charges were duly registered in favor of the bank. As of the second quarter of 2026, the loan was in default to issue them, and this forced them to issue various demand notices to these guys. In November 2017, and of course, they were ignored anyway. So you can see this statement. This statement is saying there's a place they're saying, in fact, there's a place they're saying the East African Development Bank distances itself from the ongoing public theater of the borrower's distortion of facts and disinformation and remains guided by the principles of the rule of law, its governance policy, and more importantly, by the loan facility agreement. That is why I was telling you, ladies and gentlemen, I told you that it doesn't matter what tantrums do you throw. The bank is not going to make decisions based on the politics of the day. That's why I was saying if I was him, the best thing I would do is to have a negotiation with them. Because you see, the bank is saying here that they sent him notices and they ignored. And this supports my explanation. And I told you that during that time, Tuju was in power. He wasn't scared. It, he could afford to ignore the bank. He could actually afford to ignore the bank. That's what he's stating here clearly, that they are distancing themselves. They are distancing themselves from the drama. Okay? So there's this point here. I don't know if you can read it. After the auction, meaning this thing had been auctioned. And here is the funny part. I forgot to mention this. This property on Ngong Road was auctioned in October 2024. Tuju just went to court to stop the possession of whatever had been bought. You get that? The property had been auctioned because the judgments up to Supreme Court were in favor of the bank. So the property had already been auctioned. Tuju just got court orders that were stopping the owners, the people who bought it, from taking it over, from taking over, that is. But those are the orders that were vacated on March 9th. And so 13th, the owners went to pick their land or their property. And now Tuju wants that order that vacated the temporary orders to be reversed. And anything he says that he has approached the bank several times, the bank has termed that as disinformation. Even if you had time to look at the judgment from the court from the court in the UK, you would be surprised because the judgment was registered here, so it's available in Kenya. You would be surprised. Tuju did not allege most of the things he's alleging. So my advice remains the same. What I said, if I was him, I would reach out to this bank because they are not the kind of a bank that you can scare with politics. Any bank that you hear the name development, somebody taught us that. Once you hear a bank has a name like Development Bank, just know that particular bank gives serious facility in terms of loan. And they are not the kind that you would dare default. Because even Africa Development Bank usually give African countries facilities. But when they do, if you can't pay back, you can't start drama. They don't respond to that drama. Susan is saying Why are police in his current property? What are they doing there? Okay, so Susan, if you read what I say, what the statement from East African Development Bank, they the property had already been auctioned in 2024, but there were court orders that were stopping the owners to take it. Now, those court orders were vacated, meaning they were removed. They were temporary orders, but they were removed, meaning the owner of that property now had to take back the property. Tuju, on the other hand, wants to stay in that property. So it's like you bought this studio in December last year, but I went to court and got orders. So I'm still using the studio, though you had bought the studio, but I still use the studio because I have gone to court to stop you from taking the studio that you bought. And now the court orders that were protecting me have been removed, and you've come to sit in the studio because you had already paid for the studio anyway. It is yours legally. So I just had a court order that was stopping you from stepping here. But now you come. So you come and you find me seated here going live to share a few things here and there. And you're like, get out, and I refuse. So you use the means available to enforce the orders that you take back your studio. I hope, Mwangi, that explains things. There is Benny Yalwid. Okay. Ben Yalwid. Okay. The video is very enlightening. Thank you. Karibu. Susan Mwangi, again, you're saying nowadays there is what is called alternative truth. The truth is what you want it to be. It is what you believe it to be. To hell with facts. No, that is why we would still do this. And remember, I shared with you in the course of the video that if you wanted to lie to Kenyans, it is extremely easy. Just make sure whatever you are saying is emotive. It has something to do with land. It has something to do with death. And of course, maybe it has something to do with the poor. You will get away with anything you're saying. If today you decide to say that raw politics is doing something against the poor, people won't even listen to my explanations. They will be like, you're very evil. And so that is why we are here. There is Oopsie. He's saying he is now a squatter because of drama instead of paying. I always believe that if Raphael Tuju even actually wanted to pay the loan, he could. Because you see the likes of Jimmy Wanjigi who were running with him there, his friend Uhuru Kenyatta, those are very liquid people. They don't have financial struggles. They can easily give him money to pay. Then now he owes them. They're friends. But he would prefer to blame somebody. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, just like the video, we are only at 25 likes, yet we have 100 viewers. And by the way, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. After this, the next live we are going to do may be on the next time we go live. You all voted that we do William Ruto's scorecard. And I believe it is your constitutional right to get what you voted for. So the next live, even if something serious has happened, if it is a live video, because others are just recorded, but the next live video we will do will be about William Ruto's scorecard. And then there is a day we will do question and answers, if that is something that also works for you. Question and answers is where members are just asking questions and we try to answer. Also, if you would want to participate in the live. Like there is a very good technology that can even allow us to have a live podcast with up to 4 people remotely. You don't have to be in this studio. You can be in whichever part of the world, so long as you have internet. I'll just send you a link and the subject. And then we will be here and we will have a conversation. Even if you hold different views, this is our country, we talk. As long as we talk, we will not go wrong. If we don't talk, problems zinaanza. We did I did an opinion poll here. I asked, do you believe that Raphael Tuju is being targeted politically? 80 people have voted so far, and 80% are saying no, 20% are saying yes. Um, don't forget to share where you are watching us from. And once again, like the video. Unless there is something burning from you, I hope I have shared with you something about Raphael Tuju. It was purely for purposes of clarification. No malice intended in any way. We also are not mocking a situation. We can find ourselves even in worse situations. But also, we owe each other some form of honesty. So if there's something that is being said that is not accurate based on what is in the public domain, we need to at least get that version too. Cool, Nini. Your brains is inducing unforgettable thought and you keep me glued your channel. Thank you. How can I contribute something towards your channel? Oh, now thank you. Cool. There is if you want to support this channel, if you are like a fan of raw politics and you feel like I want to support, you can join. There is a join button. You can join and be a monthly contributor. Or during lives like this, you can use what we call super chat. I think YouTube allows that. So those super chats, when you do, it will give this channel something. I'm just saying that because there is a comment that is asking, how can I? And perhaps there's somebody here who is watching who is feeling like, okay, we need to support, make sure there is light, make sure there is 1, 2, 3. But don't feel obligated. That is something that I usually emphasize on. Don't feel the need to support unless it is something that you're like, okay, I want to be part of this. I was also saying, apart from supporting that way, you can also support by subscribing, sharing the link with as many people as possible so that we have a bigger audience. If you've learned something, that it's difficult to grow, especially on YouTube, if you are not sensational. I do digital marketing for a living. And so I can tell you, if you're not sensational, if you're not also taking the route of bashing and expose and tea, it's very difficult to grow. But at least we are growing a very good audience. I'm very happy with the kind of audience we are growing here. I was looking at the statistics. The people who are watching this are serious human beings. I'm not saying others are not serious, but very serious human beings that even if they hold a different opinion from the one another person holds, it's almost impossible to go through comments and find people insulting each other. And that makes me very proud because we are having a discussion that can get this country somewhere. Yes. Where we are not confronting each other, even if we differ. We just talk. If you want to support, you join, or you can use the super chat. And you can also tell me if you would want to participate in the live. Let's say when we are doing the William Ruto scorecard, and you are one of these people who believe he has done nothing. So you can participate in the live. I just send you a link and you will be on the screen the way I am on the screen. Okay. Slowly by slowly, we'll be having a conversation. I hope you found value. Like the video. Let us like because we are now at 29. But I have to end there. I've read all your comments and I thank you. Good night, those who are in Kenya. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're watching us from. See you in the next video.